Welcome to the Electric Honey Pot, where energy is the nectar of life. My name is Autumn, and this whole project is about the human experience. The good, the bad, the ugly, and all of the magic that happens in between. Today is currently Mother's Day, and I had said in a previous YouTube video that I wanted to share my mom's story today. It has honestly been kind of difficult getting myself together to come share. I've been procrastinating most of the day because this is a heavy weight that I have been carrying in my life. I hope you would watch it or listen to it if you're listening to it in podcast form until the very end, because I would love to have your perspective and your opinion on the situation, because there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on and the police do not take me seriously whatsoever. I just want the truth for my mom. I just want justice for my mom. And for me, justice is the full truth of everything that has happened coming out, not just the man that did the deed being arrested and sentenced. And the police have shown no interest in investigating any of the suspicious activity and behaviors that have been surrounding my mom's murder. So I want to tell the story, all the stuff that has been going on, and you tell me what you would think if you were in my situation. Before I get started, I would like to say that before I put the timeline of events together and everything clicked, I did have a dream where I saw that there would be at least five people arrested in connection to the crimes surrounding my mom's murder. And in the story I'm about to tell, there are 5 people that I'm aware of involved in all of the moving pieces. My aunt, my uncle, my uncle's employee, my grandfather's trust fund lawyer, and then the man that murdered my mom. That's 5 people right there. In this dream, I was being interviewed by news outlets, podcast hosts, and YouTube creators about how I solved the case before the police and my frustrations surrounding the police not taking it seriously. After I had the dream, I started reflecting on all of the things that took place leading up to my mom's murder and the things after. And I truly believe there is more to the story than just domestic violence. With that being said, this is going to be a long video, a long podcast episode, because there's a lot going on. Again, I ask you to please listen, because you listening, you providing your feedback and supporting me would be really beneficial, because I have just been dealing with a lot of this on my own, and it's a very lonely and isolating experience. I also want to add that everything that I'm going to talk about in this episode is all allegedly. It's all alleged. No one other than the man who murdered my mom has been charged with any crime, and there hasn't even been an investigation into anything else except for the death itself. So what I am going to talk about is all just my perspective, my experiences, my observations of everything leading up to my mom's murder and everything that happened after, as well as information that others have provided to me about their own experiences. It's all alleged. Make of this story whatever you will. Okay, so the story really begins in August of 2021 when my grandfather was setting up a massive trust fund for his 3 kids. My uncle, the eldest, my mom, the middle child, and my aunt, the baby. Back at the beginning of August, I had been assaulted by my local county sheriff's department for going to the hospital voluntarily seeking mental health help when I was suicidal. They nearly paralyzed me, and I lost my 3 jobs. I lost my apartment, and my elderly grandparents had taken me in to make sure that I did not become homeless while struggling with my health issues. While there, I had overheard my grandfather during his finalization of the trust fund talking about how this should keep the kids from fighting over their inheritance, because he knew that my mom was going to get the raw end of the deal because she had just never been the kind of person to prioritize money. She cared more about her family and her hobbies than that. And her siblings were the complete opposite. And this trust fund was massive. My grandfather had a real estate empire comprising of commercial properties and rental properties. He would also buy houses and then renovate them to sell them for profit as well. And then, of course, they had a large farm in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is worth a pretty penny on its own. Shortly after I had my spinal surgery in October of 2021, I moved into a shed on my uncle's property that my grandfather had paid my mom to renovate for me. Once I moved into the property, that is when I really started to see my uncle's true colors and kind of understand who he is as a person. I already had some not so great memories from childhood visiting my cousins during the summertime, but I hadn't really been around him as much as an adult. Moving down there, I started to have all the tenants coming to me constantly complaining about my uncle. They would tell me that he's stealing money from them, that items are showing up missing around the property, and that he would let himself into their homes when they weren't home without permission. One of them even told me that he killed their cat. My uncle has had anger issues my entire life, so I could totally see him doing that. There was even one man that had a standoff, an armed standoff with the police while I was living down there. I came home from work one day and there was like a dozen different sheriff's cars in my front yard. They wouldn't let me go to my house, telling me that it wasn't safe, that there's a standoff going on. The man got arrested, and I eventually learned that he had beaten his girlfriend bloody and then threatened her and her puppy with a gun, and she had escaped to the neighbor's house covered in blood and only wearing a towel. After he got arrested, I actually got really close to this woman, and she started telling me how my uncle and this man that murdered my mom were having secretive lunches. Like, she worked with my uncle. My uncle does like home renovations and home appraisals and things like that. And she would work with my uncle and the man that murdered my mom. And she told me that they would have secret lunches where they made her eat outside by herself or go back to her house while they had lunch together, which I find really strange because this took place between like October of 2021 and January of 2021. My grandfather set up the trust fund in August of 2021, and then my grandfather died in February of 2022. Then my uncle lets this abusive man come back, even though he has a restraining order. And when I tried to tell my uncle that he is a threat to everybody down there about how the man had threatened my dog with a gun and how he had beaten his girlfriend bloody, he's not supposed to be there, my uncle told me, he's a good man who pays his bills. I believe in second chances. So I called the police and I reported this man, and he got arrested again. My grandfather died of COVID complications. He got COVID from my aunt and her husband, which so ironic to me because part of the reason why my grandparents wanted me to move out was because they were scared I was going to give them COVID because I was going to concerts I was vaccinated. My aunt and my uncle took no precautions, and they were around my grandparents, and they both got sick. Both of my grandparents almost died, but my grandmother recovered. My grandfather didn't. After my grandfather died, my uncle ends up taking over the finances from my grandfather because my grandmother had never handled the finances a day in her life. That's just not what the woman does in a biblical family structure. So my uncle took over the finances. Shortly after he took over, I would go visit my grandmother, and my uncle would be there paying bills, and I would hear him telling my grandmother that I don't know how we're going to afford your at-home care. We're going to have to cut back on it or get family to take care of you because it's too expensive. He was saying this because of the medical bills and the funeral bills regarding my grandfather. But since my grandfather passed away from COVID complications, we had state assistance in paying both the medical cost and the funeral expenses. And there was also this large income-only trust fund. So my grandmother was completely taken care of. There were multiple rental properties. There were storage units, commercial buildings. So money should not have been an issue for her whatsoever. I really think my uncle was gaslighting my grandmother into believing that she was going broke when my grandmother's mental health had been slipping for a couple of years. Her mental health had been slipping even when I was living with them. After this, my uncle supposedly sells one of my grandfather's houses that he had purchased after a church member had passed away. He sells this house and another house for $600,000 is what he told the family he sold it for. There's no record of this house selling, though, no public record of it. It still said that it belonged to my grandfather as of April of 2024 when my sister and lawyer did some digging. After this house sells, though, that's when things get really interesting. My mom suddenly tells the family that she is letting our uncle sell her house and she is moving to New Mexico with a man that she once told me she was scared would hurt her one day. My mom had been very adamant my entire adolescence that she would never leave Tennessee because this is where her family is. She said, if my family is here, this is where I'm going to die. I'm not leaving them. And she was very family oriented and close to my Nana, her mom. So this was extremely out of character. She bought an RV and started living at my Nana's house. And I would go visit my mom and my Nana at my Nana's house. And there was one day on my uncle's birthday, I went over there to visit. And my mom and my Nana were on the phone with my uncle, telling him to take a break for his birthday and spend time with his family, that he doesn't have to work so hard. My mom was telling him that if he's not going to take the time off, that he at least needs to be wearing a respirator mask because he was working in a house full of ammonia. My uncle was on speakerphone just screaming at my mom and my grandmother about how he's a man, he has to work, he has to make money, he's not going to get sick because men don't get sick. My mom left the room in tears and went to the kitchen while my grandmother just sat there listening to my uncle scream at her over speakerphone. I followed my mom into the kitchen, could still hear my uncle in the next room, and my mom was just crying over the sink about how money's not what's important in life, and he's not going to realize that until it's too late. Then, when my mom moved to New Mexico, she didn't even say goodbye to my grandmother on the day she left. There's even a Facebook post that reflects this, which is extremely out of character considering how much my mom loved my grandmother. My mom had even been acting strange in the time between saying she was moving to New Mexico and actually leaving for New Mexico. She kept trying to convince everybody that she's moving out there because of her health. And she was even trying to convince my elderly grandmother who had health problems to move out there with her. And mind you, that my mom was going to be living in an RV in the middle of the desert while her and her boyfriend supposedly built a house by themselves by hand, when my mom had multiple autoimmune diseases. Like, my mom had rheumatoid arthritis, my mom had lupus, my mom had fibromyalgia, high blood pressure, and she had also suffered several mini strokes by this point in time too. Just none of it makes sense. Shortly after my mom had moved, she had also sent out a group text message to my uncle, my aunt, my nana, my sister, and myself with her address. She was like, if you need to mail anything, send it in her boyfriend's name, because for insurance purposes on the house, I think is what she said, the house and the truck, that she's just on vacation and not actually living there, that it's just him living there, which I also find strange. She posted videos while she was out there trying to have some kind of connection with her family and friends back in Tennessee. And in every video, she's like trying to convince people and herself that she moved out there for health. She's speaking in a sarcastic tone, saying, I can breathe better out here. I really miss my family, but I'm doing so much better out here. And it was just very odd, very strange. There's even a video of this man being aggressive with the dog on my mom's Facebook page. There's also a video of her saying that she likes to go on walks to get away from the RV, and that Dennis, the man that murdered her, had gotten angry with a Home Depot employee like the day before, something like that. And she made the comment, I don't know why you're getting so angry. It's not like we're in a hurry or anything, right? Which I just find that video so eerie, so strange. It was one of the last ones that my mom posted. It's like she knew something bad was about to happen. Then my mom goes missing. I go to my grandmother's house planning on staying there with her while we wait for information, providing some support. My sister and I end up getting in an argument because I wanted to go to New Mexico with my sister to pick up my mom's dogs and what belongings we were able to pick up. I, at this time, did not know that my mom's body had already been found. But my sister and I started yelling at each other over the phone, and I remember telling her to stop yelling at me, you cunt, and then I hung up on her. I went inside crying hysterically to my grandmother, and then my uncle starts texting me, telling me that I need to calm down and let my sister handle everything like the police told her to. I told him to shut the fuck up, that he's not my dad, and my sister was yelling at me. It's none of his business. He had apparently overheard because he was on the phone with my brother-in-law when my sister and I were arguing with each other. He then messages me back and tells me that I need to watch my trashy mouth, and that if I want him to shut up, that he's down at my mom's house working like an adult, and that if I want him to shut up, I can come down there and he'll show me what it means to be a real adult. This was a threatening comment to me, given what I know about my uncle and his behavior, and the fact that I was already scared of my uncle. I told my grandmother that my family doesn't care about me and that I want to kill myself, and I left the house in tears. I went to a friend's house to decompress, and I get a phone call from the sheriff, who tells me that my aunt and my uncle called the police on me because they're concerned about my mental health. But then the sheriff tells me that they were also trying to seek a restraining order against me because they believe that I'm a danger to my grandmother. The next day, I returned to my grandmother's house with permission to retrieve my belongings and my dogs that were left over there. This was a trap. as I'm apologizing to my grandmother for yelling at her and cussing in front of her and telling her that I wanted to kill myself, my aunt comes out of the next room, and my aunt starts like yelling at me about how awful I am, how awful my behavior is. And then my uncle and his friend, who he was apparently moving into my grandmother's house to take care of her now that I wasn't going to be there, started following me around the house, yelling at me. At one point, my uncle even corners me in a bathroom, yelling at me and putting his hands on me, trying to force me to look at him as I'm begging him to leave me alone and let me leave the house. Eventually, my grandmother gets everyone to go outside so she can talk to me privately. I apologize to my grandmother again during this private conversation, and she tells me that she knows that I'm sorry and that she didn't take it seriously, that she knows everybody is just really high tension right now with everything going on. She then proceeds to tell me that my mom's body had been found, but that my aunt and my uncle had told her to keep it a secret from me. They wanted me to continue believing that my mom was still missing out there in the desert instead of knowing that she had been found and she was dead. I told my grandmother that she probably won't be seeing much of me anymore because for my mental health, I need to stay away from the family because I can't handle the way my aunt and my uncle treat me. During this whole conversation, my aunt keeps coming inside to yell at me, and my Nana keeps telling her to leave. My uncle's friend came inside at one point and tells me that I'm crying crocodile tears, that I don't care about anyone other than myself. Then, as I'm trying to leave the house, the sheriff is walking up on the front porch. My aunt and my uncle had called the police on me to report me and to try to have me hospitalized against my will. The sheriff told me that I can either go voluntarily in an ambulance or that they can take me in handcuffs in a police car. I already have trauma with the police, so I went in an ambulance. When I got to the hospital, the doctor spoke to me, and after 30 minutes, I was released. The doctor told me that he doesn't believe I'm actually suicidal. He told me that I had a triggered trauma response due to familial abuse. The next day, I was so scared to go to my grandmother's house to get my dogs and my possessions that I asked my friend to go with me, and I called the sheriff to give me a police escort out to the house. And while I was there, I told my grandmother that I'm done being abused. She's probably not going to see me again until she's on her deathbed. And then my grandmother tries to gaslight me, telling me that I haven't been abused. After I went no contact with my family, my uncle then starts telling everybody that I'm probably involved in what happened to my mom's murder based on my behavior, how unstable I am. He even started telling people that I was friends with the man that murdered my mom. I hated the man that murdered my mom. I hadn't liked him for a long time. I literally didn't talk to my mom for almost 2 years because she was dating that man, and I knew he was hurting her. I witnessed him verbally abusing her, and she had told me one time that he pushed her. I didn't have a relationship with her because I begged her to leave him, and she just stared at the floor crying while he laughed and said she'll never leave me because she knows she won't do better than me. And it was bad for my mental health. The truth is, my uncle was friends with that man. He was literally having secretive lunches with him in the time between my grandfather filing that trust fund and the months after. Then, the man that murdered my mom sues my sister because my sister is in possession of his storage unit and he's in possession of our mom's storage unit. And my sister is court ordered to work with this man to trade belongings. One of the items that he wanted back was a grandfather... One of the items that he wanted back was a grandfather clock pendulum. This pendulum was located in the shop at my Nana's house, my grandmother's house. When my brother-in-law went to my Nana's house to try to retrieve this clock pendulum, my family ganged up on him and started screaming at him and verbally abusing him and accusing him and my sister of being involved in my mom's murder because they're helping the murderer get his stuff back. So my sister had to go to court empty-handed, tell the judge what happened, and then the judge subpoenaed my elderly grandmother to court because it happened on her property for contempt of court because the item wasn't returned. And then after that, the family started bad-mouthing both of us to the extended family about how awful we are and how we help murderers. My uncle also increased my rent by 80% without any notice, and I was told it's because the price of things are going up, even though I was living in a shed that my grandfather had paid for. I was on well water, and the only thing that my uncle was paying for was electricity, and I was paying $280 a month. You know, there is no way that my electricity was more than that. Then in 2023, I moved out of my uncle's property. I used money that I got from my sister and I selling our mom's house to avoid it being foreclosed on. I used this money to buy a house of my own to escape abuse that I was experiencing on my uncle's property because this guy next door was abusing me. This meth addict and this computer hacker that lived next door was literally spying on me using cameras and emotionally abusing me. He stole my laptop and my U-Haul as I moved out. My neighbor didn't believe me and called the police at one point because I said that I was going to call my uncle. So she called the police because I was trying to retrieve my stolen laptop. The police show up. My uncle literally lies for this man, lies about me on a police report, says that I was living with that man and that my uncle was having to remove me because I was causing problems with all of the tenants down there. Meanwhile, I was literally moving out of the property because I was sick of all of the chaos with the tenants that he would rent to and all of the tenants constantly complaining to me about the way my uncle treats them. This computer hacker man that stole my laptop and abused me has also stolen from and abused other women. I have actually connected with several of them since then, and one of them told me that the laptop that he carries around and uses regularly is my stolen, custom-built HP Omen, and she also told me that he most likely has dirt on my uncle because she one time threatened to report all of the illegal stuff that he's doing to my uncle, who's his landlord, and he laughed at her and told her that his landlord's not going to do anything about the stuff that he does down there because he has more than enough information on my uncle to ruin his life. After I move into my house in February of 2024, that's when I have the dream about 5 people being arrested in connection to what happens to my mom. I started to suspect my uncle as I began reflecting on things, how he's a narcissist and narcissists project their own guilt and blame onto other people. But I didn't understand why. Then in March of 2024, my sister and I receive a hand-typed letter from the estate law lawyer that my grandfather had used for the trust fund. In this letter, there's literally only 2 accounts and 1 property listed out of multiple properties and accounts. It says that it's income only, but it's saying that a third of the trust fund for us is only $80,000 for us to split. There's only 1 commercial property in this letter, and none of the rental properties are listed in this letter. And then the 2 houses that he supposedly sold for $600,000 profit is not in this letter either, which is strange, you know? Even the commercial property was not listed for the same price as it was listed for on public record. My sister and I requested copies of the original trust fund and the updated trust fund. Oh yeah, this letter stated that the trust fund was dated April 11th of 2023 when my grandfather had filed the original trust fund on like August 21st or 22nd of 2021. So, or the 19th, August of 2021. I do know that for sure. So the dates weren't even right. The lawyer refused to send a copy to us. My sister called my uncle pretending like she was the only one upset about the amount to try to get information out of him. He told my sister that our grandmother was so upset at us for not attending her birthday party on April 28th of 2023 that she had asked our aunt to drive her to the lawyer's office to sign away her rights to make sure grandkids didn't get inheritance. He told my sister that if Autumn has a problem with it, tell her to hire a lawyer. I was already looking at hiring a lawyer. He didn't have to say that. Later that night, my uncle ends up messaging my sister, apologizing to her for what he said to her and asking for her forgiveness. I ended up hiring a lawyer with the last $1,000 that I had from left over from buying my house. My lawyer sent multiple requests to the estate law lawyer requesting a copy of the original trust fund and the updated trust fund, and the estate law lawyer refused to send copies every single time. After the first request, he told my lawyer that he does not support he is not over the trust. Rather, he is just supporting the trustees in the administration of the trust. He lists the trustees as my aunt and my uncle. Meanwhile, my lawyer pulled up public records that show that my aunt and my uncle had given up their rights as trustees. They had relinquished their rights as trustees on March 22nd of 2023, which then made my uncle's employee, my previous landlord, or my previous property manager when I was living under my uncle, and a realtor that works for my uncle. She became the non-interested trustee of the trust. How are you non-interested if my uncle pays your bills, huh? One thing. But also, if she is the trustee on March 22nd, 2023, then why is the lawyer saying in April 2024 that he represents the trustees and he says it's my aunt and my uncle and not my uncle's employee, who public record shows is the actual trustee at this point in time? No mention of her. So the lawyer's lying. That's a lie right there. Records also show that my uncle's employee on April 11th, 2023, the date of the updated trust fund, remember, she outright conveyed through quick deeds multiple income earning properties out of the trust fund into my aunt and my uncle's names. How is this even possible if my grandmother did not sign away her rights as a trustee until after April 28th of 2023? You know, that makes absolutely no sense. I believe that my grandmother's signature was forged. On my grandmother's birthday on April 28th of 2023, my uncle made this extremely long Facebook post speaking about my grandmother, and he talks about how my grandmother speaks humbly about those who are selfish and who are responsible for Karen's death. He is using plural language to describe what happened to my mom. Meanwhile, as far as the police knew, and as far as the police are even concerned now, there's only one person involved. So why is he using plural language when he's talking about it? The last email that my lawyer got from the trust lawyer was literally just a cropped out excerpt from the trust fund stating that it was an income only trust and that's why the amount was so low. Okay, but what about all of the income earning properties that were removed from the trust fund? Because there were multiples of them and they were not listed. My uncle had also evicted all of the tenants from these properties and began selling these properties off once my lawyer began requesting copies of the trust fund, which, if you ask me, it sounds like he's trying to dispose of evidence of financial fraud. I couldn't afford to keep paying my lawyer, so my sister and I were actually forced to sign for the fraudulent trust fund due to hardship. I'm on disability. I have a hard time working with my back and my mental health problems, and my house was at risk of foreclosure because it's also been hard to keep a job with the grief of losing my mom. My sister was also temporarily disabled because she's the sole breadwinner of a family of 4 while my brother-in-law goes through liver failure. She had slipped and hurt her back. So we were forced to sign for the $80,000 to help ourselves out. When we go to the lawyer's office, the lawyer was speaking really meekly, like he just seemed anxious talking to us. He was sweating, he was avoiding eye contact, he kept leaving the room like he didn't want to be around us. After I got home, I even realized that the trust fund that they had us sign is the date of the original trust fund, yet the letter of the amounts that they gave us was the updated trust fund amounts. So they even had us sign the wrong thing after they had told, we didn't get the amount of the thing that we signed for. It's just so frustrating. In August of 2024, a month after my sister and I were forced into signing the fraudulent trust fund, I began speaking publicly about my suspicions and everything that has happened. And I have had multiple victims of my uncle reach out to me, women that he tried to solicit sex from, women that he manipulated, women that he emotionally abused, women that he stole from. And it's not the first time that he has done legal tricks to steal from people and to prevent people from getting assets that were rightfully theirs. It is a pattern. It is consistency. And I believe that he needs to be investigated, and the police will not take it seriously. And then there's just been all kinds of strange things going on in the case too. Like my sister and I weren't getting updates about our mom's case. And it turns out it was because our aunt was calling and pretending to be our grandmother and pretending to be my sister. So the detective pretty much stopped talking to my sister at one point and told her that she'd have to get any new information from the DA when my sister was supposed to be the one in charge of the case to begin with. Remember how my uncle told me to stay out of it and let my sister handle it? Meanwhile, my aunt is literally making it so we can't receive information, and she's harassing the detective too. When I called the detective in November of 2024 to try to talk about all of my suspicions with everything going on, the detective straight up told me that none of it matters because it happened in another state, which, if it was a crime that was planned in Tennessee, it should be investigated. If this trust fund has anything to do with the reason why my mom is not alive anymore, it should be investigated. The detective pretty much would not listen to me. He told me that his only job is to investigate if it was murder 1 or murder 2. And I told him about how it should be investigated if it has anything to do with my mom's death. The police chief literally took the phone from the detective and began screaming at me over the phone not to tell his detective how to do his job. And I hung up in tears. I called the Department of Justice for New Mexico, and the woman at the Department of Justice told me that it would be hard to hold them accountable because you kind of have to jump through hoops to do that. And she also said that I really hope you get justice because there's a lot of corruption in the state and the police don't do their job. They don't really care about doing their job. So even the Department of Justice didn't really have hope for me. Then in January of 2025, the beginning of this year, I find out from a victim's advocate out in New Mexico that I had been in contact with that part of the reason why my mom's case had taken so long, like, not only because New Mexico only has one crime lab for the entire state and they focus on high publicity cases first, but he told me that back in September of 2024, the lab had realized that the DNA from the murder weapon was missing from the envelope, that they didn't have it, which I find so strange. Are you not cataloging the DNA samples when they enter the lab? And then if the detective knew this in September and had to send in a new sample, why didn't he tell anyone that? Why didn't he tell me when I called in November trying to figure out why it's taking so long and trying to give information? During the detention hearing, the cop didn't even say that. He just said it took a while because the crime lab was backed up. So it's just so strange to me. Something doesn't feel right. No one will take me seriously. The police don't take me seriously. I tried to speak to the FBI about it because it feels like a federal crime, you know, elder abuse, grand larceny, or embezzlement, whichever it is, and potentially murder for hire, like crimes spanning multiple states. And the FBI just told me that if I'm upset about the amount I received to hire a lawyer, and it's not about the fucking money, it is about the truth. It is about my mom getting justice. It is about accountability for the things that people have done and the intentional harm that they have caused to others. I don't know. It just pisses me off. I'm so tired of it. I'm sorry that this video isn't perfect. It's kind of an emotional subject. It's been hard just to get this out of me, but I needed to get it out of me. Please let me know what you think. I could really use help. I just want justice for my mom, for my sister, my grandparents. I'm not a perfect person, and my family is not perfect. I didn't have the best relationship with my mom or my grandparents for a very long time, but at the end, we were mending our relationship. We were trying to work through the trauma, and then all of this happens. I still loved my family. I still love my family. And I'm just so tired of people purposely causing pain and getting away from it, getting away with it. This world is full of injustice, and it's a really hard place to be. Thank you so much for listening. If you are still listening, please let me know in the comments what you make of all of this. Do you think I'm crazy? I love you, Mama. I wish you were here for Mother's Day.